like we said, really excited everybody's here. Thanks to all our return visitors. Thanks to all our new visitors as well. Really excited to have Catherine here today, and we're excited to talk through cyber, the busy season, your retailers, and how important it is to get started on this new product now. There's no time like the present, and Catherine will really help us understand that a little bit more later today. So hey, on our agenda today, we're going to talk small businesses and cyber insurance, talk some coverage, some claim scenarios. Towards the end, I'm excited to show you some enhanced cyber quoting experiences on the Attune portal. And then I'll actually run another demo for everybody today. And we'll talk a little eligibility as well towards the end. But first, I'd love for Catherine, if you could just introduce yourself, talk about who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Lyle. I am the head of claims here at Coalition. We handle all of the cyber events, my team. We are a team of 15 currently all over North America now, actually, because we have some in Canada. We have various experience from, multiple years, 2 years plus to 20 some odd years in just the cyberspace. I'm an attorney by training. I've been with Coalition for 5 years, so almost since the dawn of time. And I'm really excited to get to talk to you today because I think that there is a large gap in understanding between where a cyber event occurs and how it occurs and to whom it occurs to. So I'm really excited. So please also treat this as a conversation. Like if you can open up, do we have a place that they can open up questions? I'm more than happy to, pivot to those in between slides, et cetera, to keep it as informal as possible.
Awesome. I'll flag if we see any Q&A come in. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Catherine. I'll pass it off to you in just a sec. I think everybody knows at this point, but I'm Brennen. I'm our head of account management. You've probably seen me throughout our cyber pilot through public launch. Been here at Attune for about a year, was formerly an independent agent. Before in my past life, I was also a captive agent with State Farm. So I always remind everybody that because a lot of folks internally here at Attune, not only did we build our portal and our experience for independent agents, but a lot of us have been independent agents before. So we really understand what comes across your desk, the nuance and risks, how it feels to be a generalist, and really want to help support you, not just offering cyber to who we tell you is a good fit, but offering cyber to everyone and how you can overcome objections throughout a plethora of class codes and scenarios. So with that, just wanted to kind of remind you, again, Attune, I think you probably came here and got started for BOP or GL, but we've continued to add cool new digital products over time. And the one I've been most excited about has been our partnership with Coalition on their cyber product. And what many of you may not know is that last fall, Coalition acquired Attune. So we're so thrilled to be not just partnered, but part of the Coalition brand. And that's why we get these great opportunities to have our head of claims, Catherine, here. And with that, Catherine, I'll pass it back over to you. You can really dive in and talk some cyber and just throw me a high sign if I need to advance some slides, okay?
Great, thanks so much. So as Brennen said, being a generalist, extremely difficult, right? Having to be the master of all, like having mastered that languages and all of the understanding of everything, very difficult for different lines of business. And so we're going to spend some time talking about cyber to be able to educate you up, talk about the things we're seeing, and especially how it impacts a lot of your clients. And focus today is on the retailers, that SME market, which is that small to medium, but we're really focusing on that small market. Because traditionally, as we see on the next slide, we talk about how there were targets of choice historically, right? When we talk about cyber, the first thing that people think of is Target, Marriott, Ashley Madison back in the day, like the big breaches that made big news. And the reasons that these entities were targets of choice is because back then, and when I say back then, I'm really talking about 3 years ago. We're not talking always 15 years ago, but these targets of choice were because threat actors really had to go in, identify an entity for the information they hold. They would then take that information and sell it, or go back and say, I have this information, and if you don't pay us, I'm going to sell it, right? So they had to find a way to monetize the market. So it was very much large companies with big valuable data that were targeted. Home Depot, again, Target, Sony, Marriott, Capital One, Equifax, right? Smart criminals targeting for a very good purpose, but they had to find a way to sell and use that data. Things have shifted now. So large entities were in the view of target. We now know that small businesses, on the next slide, we can talk about how small businesses have become bigger targets. What we have now seen since over the last 3 years is that businesses with less than, right, 25 mil in rev have seen a 58% increase. And this is just from 2021 to 2022. So we're not even talking the long game that I just mentioned to you. And there's multiple reasons why, right? We can all talk about how these smaller businesses don't have the security. They don't have the money to put towards security. They don't even have advisories. They don't even have someone that can put through when we have Patch Tuesdays, right? Those things don't happen. But even more of the reason why is because they're now targets of opportunity. So in the next slide, we really talk about these targets of opportunity and how what's happening is because they are left open, because they get scanned just as we scan them every day, like a hacker, the hacker sees an opportunity, does not care if this will put them out of business, does not care if they cannot pay the ransom, does not care if they're a nonprofit, does not care if they're trying to cure cancer. It's a not matter situation. Instead, what they found out is through automated tactics like ransomware, funds transfer fraud, which we'll dig into just a little bit and unpack that for you and explain those. We've seen these mom and pops becoming super attractive because their security measures are less. They also have technology that's speaking to the internet in a way that threat actors know how to abuse. So they're resourceful. They try to capitalize on their efforts. And the best way to do it is how they've figured out how to monetize their crime. So historically, they would go in and say, we're going to steal your information and share it. Now they go in and encrypt all the information and say, we're not going to decrypt it unless you pay us. And if they don't decrypt, they're out of business. Or two, they go in and they trick an entity to wire money to another, to the threat actor instead. And then the insured, in our case, or your client will be out $50,000 that they were due to pay to their vendor, but then they still have to pay that $50,000. So it's a total of $100,000 that they have to make up, which for most small companies will put them out of business. So what we have been doing is we have been focusing more on scanning each one of these types of entities like a threat actor and showing the small companies, hey, if you fix these small elements and we walk them through and say, this is how you fix these small elements, you will be less likely to be attacked and you're not that low-lying fruit anymore, you're higher up on that tree. And that is the goal. And so it moves them from being a target of opportunity and makes them harder to be, right, to be that target. So the landscape overall, though, as I was talking about, has evolved. And so let's just review kind of the things that I've sprinkled in here for you about what's changed. On the next slide, we lay out what's changed and the impact. So these attacks, so the attacks that I just laid out for you are pretty much automated. They say, we know that if we see remote desktop protocol, this is what we do. So they scan in the internet for remote desktop protocol. They're looking to see if there's a remote way into this entity's system. They're looking for other, threat areas, right? Areas that are open that they can go in and use. And they do that on an automated matter. So it takes no skill. It's sending it off, it's getting done, and then it comes back to them and they say, okay, now let's start launching these attacks. So it increases the amount of crime, right? When it becomes super simple, it increases the amount. And then ransomware and funds transfer fraud, as I just talked about, it has monetized the crime. So instead of committing the crime and then having to figure out how to sell everything, they already have the money. They either have to negotiate for the ransom, or they already have the funds in their account and they're using their money mules to transfer it out. And small companies become profitable targets because of, one, the automated attack we already talked about, and the ease to which they can get in because somebody hasn't been patching, they don't have the technology, they don't have the support, and they have stale or old technology. So these are why these small entities are becoming so at risk. And what's also then important to know is there's a recent study, and I wish I could remember the name of it, and because I would love to give credit, but maybe by the end of it, I will pull it. They just did a study that entities that have policies, 80% have been using their cyber policies. That should tell you right away how valuable this type of policy is to have. If 80% are using it, that means this great number of entities that are out there are just simply shutting their doors and going out of business because they cannot afford the attack that just occurred to them. So now let's talk about how they're being impacted. On the next slide, we can really talk about the ways that this is occurring. And this is where I said to you before, I would walk you through the types of loss, because you, as the broker, you're the ones that are going to be the educated entity, right? The person that can say, hey, this is what you face as a potential. And I guarantee you, every time you say ransomware first, your client is going to say, I am too small. I am not on their radar. They're not going to ransom me. 58% increase, as we talked about on the slide 2 slides ago, 58% increase, making small businesses bigger targets. It is ransomware, it's FTF, and it's all caused by phishing. So ransomware, this is quite simple. A hacker finds something like remote desktop protocol, anything that gets right mainly into their main part of their system. And they say to them, they launch it. It encrypts all of the data in their system. So if you have a retailer, they're not doing business that day unless they know how to do only cash transactions. And if they can then calculate tax and all of those elements, they're not doing any work. They're brought to their knees. And they're brought to their knees until they pay that ransom. And they have to know how to reach out to the threat actor, negotiate with the threat actor, then receive a key, a proof of life, know that key will work, then decrypt their system, and then basically do all the restoration. Now, we just talked about how a lot of these entities are in that situation solely because they don't have the IT support. So they don't have the money to pay for all of those elements. And they don't have the money to ensure that they're now kicking out the bad actors so they don't come back and ransom them again. Ransom on average is costing between $250,000 to $1.4 million. Again, even for the lowest range of $250,000, it's hard pressed for a small company to be able to say, yes, I have those kind of funds sitting around that I can never see again and be okay. And it really is this hostage situation. But what they should also know is that it's a 47% increase in demand, and the attack vectors, the way they're doing it, has also increased. So ransom for small companies, very much on the rise. And so that's the first thing you're going to get response is, they won't attack me. They will attack anybody that they can get and encrypt, because then they can get money from. The second one is what I call FTF, right? This is that wire fraud that you'll often hear about. You'll also hear it as social engineering, where a fraudster, a threat actor, let's just use a criminal, right, will send someone a phishing email. They click on it, enter in their password, nothing happens. They're like, the spreadsheet's not opening up. Oh, well, and then they just move on to their next task, not realizing that they have literally given their email and their password to the threat actor. So what now happens is the threat actor basically enters in the email system as that person. They just do it remotely and they enter it in and they say, okay, the password was 12345. Ha, yay, I'm in. What they do then is they start doing a search through the emails and say, okay, any email that says finance, vendor, money, transfer, bill, invoice, any of those that come in, flag them for me and put them into this file. And then they hide the file inside that person's email box. So they don't even know that they've been infiltrated. They then start pretending to be that person and say, hey, look, thank you so much. I know you received our invoice. Our next invoice is going to change. We're going to have you pay it to blank. Or when the vendor is emailing in saying your invoice is due, they intercept that and then send an email from a fake email address that looks very similar to, it's like a homoglyph of the vendor's email and says, hey, we know you owe us $20,000. Thank you so much. By the way, we changed our bank. Please send it to this account. They say, okay, great. Flip it over, change it. They'll even email back and say, hey, did you send me this? And are you sure this is changing? The threat actor responds, yep, that's exactly what I meant. Thank you so much. So now our insured is either wiring out $50,000, $100,000, $20,000, whatever it is that they thought was going to that vendor, and it's going right into the threat actor's bank account. Or the vendor is supposed to be paying them, their client is supposed to be paying them of $20,000, and it gets wired to another account, and now they're out $20,000, and so is their client. So there's multiple ways you can lose those funds, but it really comes down to an email breach and a breach of that network. And, we've seen a large increase of these events, but they are 100% devastating to a small entity, because unlike ransomware, you might be able to reason with the threat actor and say, hey, look, I can't pay $250,000. Look at our tally of our spreadsheets. We've got $25,000 in the bank account, and you'll wipe us out. And they might say, okay, fine, send us the $25,000. Once your money is gone, you cannot negotiate with the threat actor and say, hey, the $250,000 I sent you, could you send half of that back? We really can't afford that. Threat actor's already transferred it off and it's gone. And then finally, the last aspect is, while it says phishing and data breach, it starts as the data breach. It really tries to become that social engineering, or they're using it to splash out an email to everyone else to get them to click on the link so that they can then keep perpetuating all of these crimes. And when you start looking at these, you can see on the next slide, we can talk about the real cost of funds transfer fraud. So when we look at this, we've seen the severity and we've seen the frequency. So the frequency is going up. There's no question. This is a profitable way for a criminal to act and behave, but you can also see that the severity has gone up. So, H1 of 21, we were at 193,000. H1 of 2022, we're at 216,000. What's also important to note here is that back in 2021, it was a quicker game. They were doing like a one and done kind of thing. They're now playing a longer game. So they're staying in the email system longer. And what that means is that the FBI generally says, hey, look, if we have 72 hours, we can claw those funds back. But if it's more than a week, the likelihood that any of those funds will come back, not likely. So what the threat actor's been doing is staying in the game longer, right? Because someone might email back and say, hey, by the way, I sent you those funds. And then they have to play the game back and be like, yeah, let me go look. I'll look at it. I'll respond to you, tomorrow or the next day. No worries. We trust you, right? And then 2 days later, they say, hey, did you ever get those funds? And then the threat actor responds again, right? So they're playing monkey in the middle, and they keep trying to keep the game going as long as possible so that nobody knows, so that they can transfer out all of the $216,000. The positive side to this is there is insurance for this. And that's where you, as our generalist brokers, they come in and you can have and serve up all of this knowledge of saying, hey, this is why these policies are important and why cyber should be really that number one thought right now, because everybody has that risk. So on the next slide, we can really talk about broad cyber coverage and how it's designed for all of these digital risks. Everyone, another thing you're going to hear beyond the first one of, I'm not on anyone's target, they won't ransom me. The second thing they're going to say is, I don't do enough business, or I don't transact enough business. If you're using the internet in any form or fashion, if you are sending an email, if you are paying through ACH, if you pay a bill, or you communicate with anyone about money, I guarantee you, this is the type of policy that is for them. I mean, it is not made for, you know, solely the Fortune 10s, Fortune 50s, which I have worked with and have also taken benefit of these types of policies. But it is really built for these small companies that need the assistance, right? These Fortune 10s, Fortune 50s has a huge IT team that can help them rebuild. They have the funds. But we are a pay on behalf policy. And I stress the importance of that to you, because with these small companies, with these small entities, to ask them to pay a $500,000 ransom, and then you'll pay them back, other carriers pay them back. We pay on behalf. So it's coverage for the client with pay on behalf policy that covers breach response, which we're going to go into all of these in more detail. It has business interruption, so it covers, hey, we had to pay, you know, overtime to all of our employees because when they were doing things, they had to kind of shadow book. They either had to sell it this way and then had to write down everything. Cyber extortion, that's that ransom we've been talking about. And then obviously on a third party, if anybody gets sued after all of this because data was lost, credit cards were stolen, we're there to protect them as well. So let's go in a little bit more deep on what does standalone cyber really cover. So breach response costs, it's a big word. It covers a lot of different areas. You know, it's kind of nebulous. So let's really talk about what it does cover. When an insured reaches out to us, when I say us, I mean claims. We answer that phone call. We are the first person they will talk to. If they call you first, you can call us. You can also email us at claims@coalitioninc.com. We respond to it. It's not a bot that you get. It's not something else. You speak to claims. We will help the insured, one, find an attorney. We have a series of, this is a very niche space, as you are now here learning about, right? It's a niche space, is cyber insurance. We have entities that we work with that are breach coaches. They know the laws across the United States, North America, and actually we haven't expanded for global. So anybody in the UK, you know, in Israel, you know, all these different countries where people do business, we have counsel for them. So we pay those legal fees. The reason we also pay those legal fees is because we want the attorney to put in underprivilege the forensics attorney, the forensics entities, the PR, credit monitoring. They run the show so that if they get sued at a later time, it's all within privilege. Again, we are a pay on behalf. Outside of the self-insured retention, the insured pays that. We step in the shoes of the insured and we pay the attorney's fee. We pay the forensic costs, which is to basically find out how the threat actor got in, kick the threat actor out, and then talk about what the threat actor did while they were there and what they viewed. Cyber extortion, also known as ransomware, the very thing that they're going to say to you every time, hey, by the way, we're not a target. They're a target because if they can get money from them, they will. We pay that, but we pay on behalf. Stolen funds, that's your funds transfer fraud. If the insured has paid out those funds from their account and they did so fraudulently, we will reimburse those funds. We will first try to claw them all back. So we don't want a threat actor to keep what they shouldn't be keeping. Lost business income, I touched upon this. This is those, hey, we have to pay extra expense because I need to find another vendor to do my payroll because our payroll's all locked up. Or I need to pay overtime because we're having to do everything manually. We have computer replacement. If a computer becomes more like a brick than a computer, we cover those costs and so much more. So let's dig into first third-party cover. On third-party cover, on the next slide, we'll talk about it's a big, again, a big thing. It's called network and information security liability. This is if a claim is brought against your insured, right? This is where somebody says, hey, my information was stolen under your watch, client. It was my credit card. It was my social security number. It was, and I kid you not, I have a claim today where it was a passport. It's a hospitality entity, which they do retail work. They scanned the passport of people that were coming in, and they kept all of those. All that passport information is now out there. The threat actor has confirmed they have it. They get sued for having and losing that information. We step into their place. They get sued because their client wired money to somebody else instead of them, and they've lost all of this money. They get sued because their client was a victim because of what happened on the security failure on the insurance side. Liability and regulatory, right? These attorneys general, these states that have these laws that say you're supposed to notify in X period of time. You have to notify in this way, right? We help you meet all those regulatory requirements, but if you need to defend or you get a penalty arising from it, we step into the insured's shoes. In addition, beyond cyber, we also cover multimedia. So if they get sued for the activities that they have, for the data that they're holding for their website, for all of those types of things, we step in for that as well. So that's an added bonus beyond just cyber. PCI and fines and penalties, the assessments, those are for credit card losses, right? So when a retailer loses, right, let's call it stolen, the threat actor steals all of the credit card numbers, we step in, we do all the conversations with the credit card companies, we talk about merchant liability, et cetera. You can also have endorsements for bodily injury and property damage when a third party is harmed by the loss. And then technology errors and omissions for those of your clients that are actually in that space. In addition, where we spend most of our time and where your clients will spend most of their time if they are initially harmed is that first party cover, right? These are from the ransomwares, the funds transfer fraud, the phishing emails, the data breaches, all of those types of things. So again, you can get the endorsement for bodily injury, property damage. We also have pollution, but as part of the main policy, we have breach response, right? That goes back to the slide 2 slides ago, where we talked about legal fees, forensic fees, PR costs, credit monitoring, all of those types of things. Crisis management, public relations, that comes in where we need to tell the tale. We need to talk about what happened. We want to make sure the insured is looking the best they can. Funds transfer fraud, we've dug into that a little bit. We talked about the money getting transferred back and to the threat actor and how we pay them back. And then cyber extortion, through that, we have also business interruption and extra expense. And those are the costs that are incurred to keep that business going or the money that they've lost during the course of all of this. So in the end, what I think though is also important and a selling point for you, on the next slide, we can actually talk about the benefit. We talked about all the benefits, what our policy offers, how we are, proactive, reactive, responsive, but overall, we're just active insurance. We do not sit on a shelf. And that's where, Brennen is going to talk about a lot more about how we scan and how we're there to protect all of those elements that we also offer beyond the coverage, beyond the first and third parties. Because what we've now seen is that 50% of our policy holders experience 50% fewer claims. So when you look on the national average, they're experiencing far more claims. And it's because we're doing it right. We're scanning our insureds. We're alerting our insureds where they can make a difference so that their fingerprint out there, their visibility makes them so they're not low-lying fruit, right? We fix the problems before they become a problem. And then on top of it, 45% of incidents we handle at no cost to the policyholder. So they may call us and say, I just did something really dumb. I got an email, I clicked on it, I entered in my password, and now I realize that that wasn't a legitimate email. They call us and we give them our CIR, which is our Coalition Incident Response Team. That's our forensics team. They will go in, look through the email and say, you know what? Nobody has come in yet. So let's change your password. Let's turn on multi-factor authentication so this never can happen again. And let's send you on your way. And we've now prevented a loss from happening. Because while insurance is there, it still is a painful event to occur. Any questions, Brennen, that I can answer before I hand it over to your capable hands?
I'm still just baffled at that 80% stat you hit us with. I hadn't heard that one earlier.
Oh, let me go find that while you're chatting away with our crew. I will find that and share that. But
wow. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. And I think you know, I've said it in previous webinars, but you know, in the theme of Thanksgiving is next week, I regularly find myself just truly grateful at the opportunity, one, to sell the Coalition product, but two, just at like the foresight and the timing that this product hit the market. Looking over these stats and seeing what you and your team are able to do for our insureds and prospective insureds, seeing all the stats and hearing you explain everything, I mean, really makes it a no-brainer.
So the article I was talking about was within business insurance. Okay. And it said that 80% of, I believe they've drilled it in even further, but for IT companies, but for professionals that whose companies have cyber insurance have used it.
Wow.
So business insurance.
That's incredible. Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
So pretty incredible. Well, but to your point, 'tis the season. Retailers notoriously get hit the hardest between now and January. And unfortunately, they don't really find out until February that they've been hit. But so 'tis the season. If brokers want to go out and start, you know, selling and running their entire book with this, now is the time because it gets really rough for retailers.
Yeah, tis the season to need some active monitoring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll stay
Catherine,
on
thanks a ton.
In the future, but otherwise,
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Catherine. And you know, as we talk about these stats, and hey, you know, when we talk retailers, Crystal, great question here. You know, I typically back into this question. It's much easier for us to describe the Coalition cyber appetite as kind of how you describe a HO5 home policy exclusions and coverage. It's much easier to tell you what we don't want to take a look at. So, you know, part of our resource library includes a full appetite guide, but keep in mind, we really have just a few big no-nos. So at Coalition, we're not going to take on any kind of casino or gambling risks. We're not going to do any adult entertainment. We're not going to do the managed service provider side of the IT space, okay? And in addition to that, we're also not taking on any cannabis. And I typically always miss one here. But that's the meat and potatoes of what we're not going to cover. We'll also make sure part of, you know, Attune's resource library and any kind of documents or information you'd request will include a full appetite guide with hot class codes along with info we won't cover. Thanks for the question. So for the banks, absolutely, we'll definitely want to take a look. And hey, on that thread, sorry, I'm on this, but we might as well talk about it. We do see quite a few eligibility check questions before our agency partners go into quote. I would encourage you that Coalition's tech-based underwriting process is comprehensive. We'll let you know if we think you didn't classify the business correctly. Providing the domain is like the skeleton key to utilizing our underwriting process properly. But truly the best way to get an in real-time risk evaluation out of Attune or Coalition is to go ahead and submit the quote. You'll see here, however you quote it through our portal, typically takes 5 minutes or less in true Attune fashion. So instead of just coming to us saying, hey, I've got this risk, is it eligible? Take a couple minutes, run the quote. We'll give you the security scan. We'll run a full analysis. We'll let you know if we think you didn't classify it properly. But most of the time, our agency partners have found that just by jumping in and submitting the quote, you'll find it's eligible, which is great. So I will stop gabbing at everyone about this and just remind everybody that, hey, you probably got started with Attune to come check out our BOP policy. We've been built for, brokers or independent agents since our very first day of inception. You get direct access with no production requirements, competitive commissions. Specifically on our cyber, we're paying 15% new business commission and 15% renewal. We really focused on leveling the renewal commission. The product is so spectacular. There should truly be no reason for you to move it at renewal. And the last thing we wanted to do was drop commission there. I love this instant decision process. Okay, with cyber, you're either going to see decline. We do have certain risks that require manual review, but we get those done rapidly. And most of the time, about 80% of our quote pipeline is ready to bind right after quote. The paperless underwriting process is incredible. There's no sub apps, no Accord form submission required. It's pretty spectacular. I love the direct bill feature, especially considering you can take insured payment yourself over the phone, or you're always welcome to forward that invoice right to the insured with the link. And then, of course, in addition to my team of account managers and sales reps across the company, we have a wonderful customer care department you can reach on the phone or through chat on the website. And I feel like it's a great time just to talk about a new quoting experience. And so if you quote BOP with Attune, these screens should look familiar. And if you've quoted BOP recently, you've probably seen that we have a extra cyber option here in our additional coverages page. And you'll see, we'll call it active cyber. We have a few selling points here just to remind you why it's so great. And then in this widget, we have two options for a $100,000 limit or a $250,000 limit. Now, when we launched this, I saw a little bit of confusion and just wanted to remind everybody that one, hey, this is quoting an actual standalone cyber policy, okay? Premiums are very in line with what you see from the endorsement base, how we quoted here. To kick tires, I haven't really seen a minimum premium threshold out of Coalition, but the lowest quote I've been able to generate was $112 a year for a $100,000 limit, which is pretty stinking competitive. So, hey, embedded in the portal, you'll see a nice comparison between a BOP endorsement and our actual standalone cyber coverage. But what I really wanted to direct everybody to is when you're finished quoting this BOP, you're going to see a pop-up in the bottom right hand of your screen that says, hey, like you submitted the cyber quote. And what I want to tell everybody is don't worry, it didn't go anywhere. You can actually drop right into the cyber card within the portal. And you'll see that we did actually create you a standalone cyber quote you can present. You'll see the Coalition risk assessment here. You're also able to go in and edit that quote, change the limit, maybe double check the answers, enter the domain to make sure everything got screened properly. I'm really a big fan of this. So let's see that in action. Let's take a look. So you will see that I did a little test quoting here with some of my good friends across town here in St. Louis, Mo at Click Janitor Supply. Yes, I got their permission to run the quote and present today. So first, I want to jump into this business owner's policy quote flow. To save a little bit of time, I'm not going to fully requote the risk. However, essentially what you'll see is if I come in here, I hit edit, I picked an effective date, state, put in the particulars. We'll click right on through this application. And what we'll see is as we go through, check the employee count, deductible, we'll kick in some business details, check off the building coverage, fun fact, if you select wind deductible, not applicable, we will put everything subject to the all perils deductible. You select your liability limit, med pay expense, damage to premises rented to you. I jokingly put HNOA on here because I love that we offer that. And finally, we get to this beautiful hidden gem additional coverages page. Just a fun fact, I think a lot of people miss this. We offer great limits on EPLI, 250K. Deductible range is very competitive, but here is the good part, right? We have got cyber coverage. So, hey, you're welcome to opt for the standard endorsement. I do truly believe, hey, like some coverage is better than none. However, with price comparison and all the value Coalition offers, you're probably not asking your insured to spend any additional money. Okay, oftentimes I found the active cyber slightly less than the endorsement. We'll go ahead, we'll enter the annual revenue. I think I put in 250,000. We'll select that $250,000 limit, 5K retention, and we will hit submit. Let's go ahead and just create a new quote, mainly so we can play this amazing quote click game. I know anybody here, does anybody here like the quote click game in the chat? Maybe I'm the only one. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, CJ. Yeah, I actually, so it's my 2-year-old Ellie's birthday today. She was born 11/16/2020. And while we were in the hospital, you know, I'm a small business owner, trying to keep the agency going with, you know, I did all the commercial quoting and the team did a lot of the personal lines. And so I was in quoting a BOP and I was on hospital Wi-Fi and it was going kind of slow. And at one point the OB came in and I was out getting a drink of water and he saw this game loading on my slow internet computer. It was like, is your husband really playing video games while you're having a baby? Wasn't the best look, but it was a fun time killer there nonetheless. Great. And so here you can see we've got our policy ready. And if we want to go take a look at the cyber quote that's going to pop for us, we'll simply hit the back button here. We'll drop right down and you'll see I have done a little test quoting on this account. You'll see we literally just had a quote populate here with that 250K limit. So let's jump in here and take a look. I'm just going to pick one ad hoc. It doesn't really matter which one I select. Now you'll see I can hop here in here and hit edit and bam, I am right inside of our wonderful standalone cyber quote flow. And so as per normal, you can click right through this, you know, for janitorial supply, this is going to be a surefire hit for admitted. So make sure that we've got an effective date. Fun fact, we are able to backdate these up to 14 days, considering the policy's full prior acts. It's not a huge issue. Address, classification, just a note, I think this is where our classification questions come from. The PL class codes sometimes load slightly differently than our general PNC BOP codes. So like, don't be shy, get close enough, enter the domain. We'll take a hard look at the underwriting that way. We'll jump right into the Coalition application, which is, I think, one of my favorite parts. I have a lot of favorite parts, is that the app is so short. On our admitted side, we've got 8 simple questions, and a few have just a smidgen of nuance to them. But I really think once you've read through it once and understand what we're asking you for, it's easy as pie. So it looks like in my test portal, we're having a couple of little glitches here with this loading, but by and large, the quoting experience is just tremendous here. What I really want to get to is the actual quote letter here. And so what we will see is, oh, you can do it. I'm trying to remember which one. I fully vetted last night, and I believe it is our 588. So traditionally what we'll see here is both our quote letter and then that wonderful Coalition risk assessment that loads just below. So, you know, as per the norm, we can download that quote letter, and I believe our engineers are prepping an update in this portal right now, but There we go. We get this beautiful coalition risk assessment. And as we've seen in past webinars, in my opinion, this CRA is truly that unlock button to your insured says, why do I need cyber? We hand over the CRA. This is a true analysis of your insured security protocols, how they score against their peers within our book. And now that this has loaded, we can just go ahead and dive right in. So we've got this CRA here for Click janitor supply. I really enjoy just a little bit of the discussion here about active protection at the beginning. Then we give a risk summary. So my friends at Click, no critical vulnerabilities. They're 0.4 times as likely to have an event. However, as we know, even organizations with the best protocols still have failures in protocol, and that's really where the need for insurance arises. So you can see all kinds of personalized information. I think one thing I really enjoy after being out in the field and reviewing this with some of our agency partners starts on page 12. What is cyber insurance? We've got really nice clear-cut definitions for each coverage line item embedded right here. So you're sitting down with your insured, discussing the policy. You can always flip back to the cheat sheets and look at the definitions. It's what they're there for. We really set this up to empower you to go sell this to your SMB clients. So I hope this was a helpful overview of the enhanced quote flow that we've created. And looking at the time, I want to leave lots of time here at the end for questions. We've still got Catherine here. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn over here to y'all in the audience and say, what questions do we have? Right off the bat, I see a question here from Michael regarding EPLI. A catering client that hasn't had coverage before has had 5 claims in the last 3 years. How they qualify to apply for an EPLI policy going forward? Great question. Hey, Morgan, if you could you help me collect Michael and Jared's email addresses, and I'll reach out to you both individually after the webinar to help with those, 1 with the marketing materials and 2 with the catering. We might be able to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have their email sent your way.
Yeah. And, you know, Catherine, it's funny, every time I bring up EPLI on our BOP, I feel like we get this question. I was telling Patrick the other day, we have lots of folks interested. Do you want to take this one if we write standalone EPL?
We do. We have it under executive risk, and we are more than happy to put you in touch. I know exactly. Yes, we do. And we have executive risk. Then we have our standalone cyber. We have our BOP with Attune. So we are kind of that, even growing more to be that full stack insurance carrier for you all. So please reach out if you need any assistance in getting connected with our executive risk team. It's a great opportunity, great time to do it.
And hey, I'll drop all my, yeah. No, I love getting the question. I'll drop my contact info in the chat here. So, you know, anybody who's interested in looking into standalone exec risks, shoot me a note. I'll get you in touch with the right folks.
And then I also see that Michael asked for cyber coverage. Do you have a client facing flyer sell sheet? We have lots of different sell sheets. So I'm sure Morgan can share those with you as well. Reach out to see what you're kind of looking for, but we do have a lot of that information for you.
Absolutely. Morgan and I actually worked together to create something I used to get from wholesalers. It's essentially just the cyber application. But on the backside, we have all the coverage options with, I'd say, like some layperson friendly verbiage on there. So you don't have to be an IT expert or an attorney like Catherine to go through and explain it.
But you
which is always helpful.
You don't. And this is where this is where I would love to instill everyone a bit of confidence. Now ransomware, funds transfer fraud. You also know how easy it is for the client to be attacked. It is no longer about target of choice. So staying 1 page ahead of the client, I can also give you some free advice for them. Turn on multi-factor authentication. It's these simple things that when you say that to them and say, do you have multi-factor authentication turned on, which is just basically a dual authentication that comes to your cell phone when you say, hey, I'm logging in, it sends the phone number, the number to your phone, then you enter in that number, and it prevents a simple thing as an email intrusion from happening. You can talk to them about those simple steps and what it does prevent, which is funds transfer fraud and a data breach. But you are already an hour trained more than they are. And we're more glad, we're more than happy as we have more webinars come in, then you'll be 2, 3, 4 hours more trained. But it is something that I truly believe sells itself because anybody who experiences one cyber event never wants to do it again.
Very well said.
Yeah, I was gonna say just a mic. Like, I wish you had a mic that you could just.
Let's see what I can find. Classic lawyer. I have a pen.
There you go. But I was also just going to add that, yeah, I'll be sending the email that I sent with the recording of this webinar afterwards. We'll have all of that, the resources that we mentioned here, a lot of PDFs for you to use that have all this information, desk sheet, flyer, retailer specific PDF in case you have a lot of retail clients. There will also be a link where you can schedule time with Brennen and his team if you have more questions, and also a link to our YouTube channel, which has all of our other previous webinars about Coalition Cyber, as well as our other products. So like Catherine said, if you really want to get in tip-top shape, you can take a look at those webinars if you missed any of them and get those 3 to 4 more hours of training under your belt.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Morgan and Brennen, for inviting me to this. It was great. It was great to meet you all, even just in this webinar.
Catherine, it was truly a pleasure. And I mean, I've been working on this product internally for about 9 months, and I learned a lot today. You're a wealth of knowledge. So really, thanks for coming and spending time with us and the agents here.
Of course. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all. Take care. Have a good day. Happy Thanksgiving.